Welcome to this Total War Pharaoh God tier ranking list. Before we get started, let's quickly define the different mechanics the local deities can affect and that we'll be ranking them on without getting too much into the weeds. Shrines are religious outposts that provide base bonuses to things like recruitment stats, resource or workforce growth, as well as passive buffs within the region. Prayers come from interacting with these shrines using your general to get buffs, like increased morale, damage, or movement range for a limited amount of turns. Devoted generals can be associated to any of the gods you worship, giving them permanent stats as long as you keep in favor with the god. Favor for any god can be accumulated through building shrines and temples, but can also be lost if those buildings are destroyed. Increasing your favor unlocks higher stat bonuses. For the purpose of the video, we'll show the final tier level. Some other things to keep in mind. While you start by worshipping a single god through unlocking the royal decrees, aka your tech tree, you can ultimately end up worshipping 3 different gods across any 3 different factions, so long as you've discovered them by conquering that territory. Each god can then have a devoted general if you've built up enough favor with them through the construction of shrines and temples. Each region can only have 1 religious outpost. However, you can build multiple outpost shrines across a province and pray at each to stack buffs, which is pretty dope. Total War Pharaoh provides a really helpful menu to help manage your shrines and temples, and convert them accordingly as your empire grows or you decide to switch and worship a new god. For this Total War Pharaoh God tier ranking list, the factors weighed most heavily are going to be the prayer and devoted general buffs. Now let's get started. Starting with our Egyptian gods. Ra just made the A tier list mostly because the morale and missile resistance prayer affects your entire army. This is perfect for your range units, which are often trading with the enemy's missile troops. It's also super helpful for chariots that tend to be quite susceptible to things like javelins. While the devoted general buff only affects melee infantry attack and damage, which is nice, the prayer buff is what really determined this ranking, and the increased workforce growth also comes in handy for quickly building up your settlements. As Ramses, your campaign will start by worshipping Ra. Ptah ranked as a D tier. The shrines, while helpful for reducing recruitment cost, aren't that game-changing and ultimately can end up doing more harm than good to your gold production once the pillars of civilization inevitably collapse. When playing Egyptians, I rarely found myself raiding or raising settlements since I had diplomatic relations with other factions willing to barter the resources I was lacking. Even the devoted general charge bonus was lacking with an okay charge bonus for all units, and the reduced upkeep, which doesn't do much mid to late game when you've already gotten enough or excess income. Horus got an A tier ranking. While influence becomes less necessary a few turns after taking a new territory, the minus 40% land movement to enemies is super effective in slowing the progress of troops moving into your less guarded regions, especially the Sea People. The prayer, giving increased movement on sea and land, combined with a negative movement for enemies, was also super helpful in chasing them down and made desert attrition obsolete. There are also some equipable items for your general that further reduce enemy movement range, which was a fun build. The devoted general benefits, like restore movement after battle, are helpful for hit and run or cleaning up fleeing enemies. Another big plus for the devoted general is the movement speed for all units, since you can't kill what you can't catch. I set Anubis as a B tier rank as I'm personally a big fan of debuffing the enemy. Depending on your chosen faction, traits, and equipment, you can get to the point where the enemy has such low morale that they won't even put up a fight. While the devoted general armor bonus for all units is nice, I found other benefits to be lacking since they mostly affected chariot units, but this could be a good god to worship if that's your preferred army composition. Isis I set as a C tier. The recruitment rank +2 provided by the shrines is nice, along with a happiness bonus, but I think the devoted general benefits are a bit weak. Influence doesn't play much of a factor once a newly acquired region stabilizes, and if you're having issues with morale, it's likely because you're already getting crushed in battle. I think the desert immunity from the prayer is a big plus, and while the minus happiness from enemy provinces is cool in theory, I'm usually focused on taking the region over instead of waiting around for a riot to break out and a rebel army to do it for me. As Tosret, you're going to start your campaign worshipping Isis. While I usually downrank gods who only benefit certain units, I rank Set as an S tier because ranged units in Total War Pharaoh are a major factor in any army composition. The shrine bonus to missile range means anyone you attack or are defending against in your territory will be at a severe disadvantage. The prayer gives increased aura size, which is helpful if your general is stuck in combat, and the speed increase for missile infantry is super effective when skirmishing. Finally, the benefits you get in your devoted general are also super nasty, with increased armor-piercing missile damage and increased reload speed. Though this is the default starting god for Seti, I raced to discover this god in my Amunes campaign, who happens to have the best archer units. Amun got an A ranking due to its benefits increasing EXP gain not only from battles, but also for your armies that you have parked in a region with a shrine. The base increase to recruitment rate and EXP per turn is really nice if you're stuck playing defense or waiting while building a new army. The The prayer additionally increases EXP gain for all units and has a nice melee attack bonus for the entire army and not just one type of unit specifically. The Devoted General buff is one of the better ones, with nice increases to speed and melee damage and another EXP from battles buff, all of which can help your army reach the max rank way ahead of your enemy, although the EXP benefits do taper off as you move into the endgame and there's not much more EXP to get. As Amunes, you start by worshipping Amun. Osiris receives an A ranking only because replenishment becomes super helpful when battling wave after wave of enemies, especially when the sea people invade. And I've definitely found myself being sieged where I'd gladly take the extra holdout time these shrines provide. The prayer increases your charge bonus across your entire army, which is decent, but the real highlight is again the replenishment. Devoted generals have the additional benefit of replenishment in enemy regions, as well as replenishing more troops from taking on captives post-battle. Lack of replenishment can really cause problems, so Osiris is high on my list and often one of the 3 gods I worship for the prayer buff. Compared to other gods, Thoth really fell short in my opinion, and so I put it as a D tier. The shrine's benefits to construction time and cost don't cover all buildings, and you usually hit a point where your gold income is high enough to quick construct when needed. For my campaigns, I found it rare to need the additional reduction to enemy siege holdout time or siege equipment costs the prayer provides because the enemy usually sallies out to fight, or I'm trying to take the city before their reinforcements arrive. The Devoted General buff is nice, but doesn't make up for the other benefits of worshipping the god. As Bay, you start with worshipping Thoth. Now let's move on to the Canaanite god tier ranking list. Baal got a B rank when compared to other gods as the benefits are mid. The shrine bonuses aren't anything special, but the prayer bonus has some redeeming qualities with the replenishment rate and charge bonuses. It's always nice getting a rare blue item from the uncommon ancillary chance increase, which does help your generals out. The Devoted General melee defense is okay considering it affects all units, and similar to Osiris, the replenishment rate in enemy regions does provide some staying power for your conquests. El was also middle of the road, receiving a B tier ranking. The shrines don't offer too much, and the major benefits come from the prayer, although you'll need to be conscious of keeping active with the desert attrition immunity and not get caught in the desert with it fading, especially if you're planning on invading Egypt. The ancillary chance bonus will only provide greens that can still be good enough if you're lacking gear, and the Devoted General buff is nice as it affects all units of your army, especially with the speed increase. As mentioned before, the movement restored after battle can be effective in chasing down a fleeing enemy or retreating back to the safety of a settlement, as I found myself stuck outside the gates way too many times. Moloch is one of the few S tier ranked gods to worship and is made for melee. The shrines provide solid workforce growth, allowing you to build up your settlements in less time, and a nice bump to melee defense for infantry recruits. The prayer gives your melee troops a little bump to battle EXP, increased morale, and a very nice resistance to missile damage for your entire army. As melee units most often make up a good portion of your army composition, the melee attack and damage bonuses make you a force to be reckoned with. It's no wonder Moloch is the starting god worshipped by Irsu. With the limited amount of gods you can worship, I'd rank Ashera as a C tier. The shrine bonuses are lacking any benefit to recruitment or passive battle buffs, and while the prayer does grant immunity to desert attrition and a nice upkeep decrease, the negative happiness does make more sense for Canaanites like Irsu, so to me it's nothing to write home about. The influence increase for enemies is also a bit strange, and I'm not sure if that was made to balance worshipping this god or not. Your Devoted General does have a nice increase in melee defense and morale, and the influence bonus can help you stabilize newly acquired land, but it's really not enough to move this god up in rank. I ranked Yam as an A tier mainly because of the upkeep bonuses. The shrine benefiting food production is usually helpful if you find yourself lacking that resource, and makes a reduced recruitment cost for all units even more important. Having reduced upkeep, especially of bronze and gold, can be extremely helpful if you intend to field more than a few armies. But you'll just want to be conscious of when those buffs fade, which could become a bit tedious, and if timed wrong, you can find yourself in a heap of debt. The charge bonus your Devoted General gets is decent, but the permanent upkeep reduction is going to let you field more top tier units than your enemy until you get to excess resource income. Finally, let's end with the Hittites god tier ranking. Shaushka makes the A tier rank with the highest melee attack and melee damage for its Devoted General of all the gods. The bonus to workforce growth means you can upgrade your settlements faster, and the additional melee defense on recruitment also benefits your melee troops. The morale buff provided from the prayer is okay, but the damage resistance versus missiles for all units brings the most benefits. The Devoted General permanent buff, as mentioned, will absolutely smash, and it's got a nice little dash of speed bonus in there too, which can make all the difference in positioning or running down enemies. However, be mindful of your general's bodyguards who will get more tired more quickly, so you may consider keeping them on a stationary chariot or as an archer in the back and not on the front line. In my opinion, Kumarbi is one of the better Hittite gods to worship, making him S tier. The shrines provide a massive EXP bonus per turn, which is really nice if you're catching your breath before invasions, or for generals who are staying as garrison troops and not getting experience from fighting. For those armies on the offense, the additional increase to EXP is solid, along with melee attack bonus for all units of the army. Even more EXP bonuses are provided to your devoted general, so it won't take you long to max out your current or next tier units as you swap them out. As mentioned before, these EXP bonuses start to be less necessary toward the end game, but you'll enjoy some wicked EXP until you get there. Another callout is the additional melee damage and massive speed increases your units will get in your devoted general's army, who you should probably have on a chariot considering the charge bonus provided to their bodyguard unit. Karunta is ranked as an A tier due to the necessity of needing to travel long distances to secure your territory from invaders. If you're the one doing the invading, particularly in Egypt, then you'll gain a lot of benefit from the desert attrition immunity from the prayer as well. The increased aura size of your devoted general does come in handy for keeping neighboring units' morale high, and keeps them in range when you dish out any activated ability buffs. The speed and charge bonus can complement any of your units, including any armored melee chariots in your composition. The movement restored after battle is the most of any god and works really well for chasing down any retreating enemies, or returning to safety if you had a close victory. As his namesake, Karunta starts his campaign by worshipping Karunta. Arena is a C tier ranking, but you may prefer worshipping her if you plan to have a more Raider-esque playstyle. But I don't really see that necessary unless you're playing like Irsu or plan to be at war with everyone and not barter resources. The shrines do provide strong core benefits like reduction to recruitment cost, increased happiness, and food production, which is often sorely needed in early game. The prayer, as mentioned, is really focused on raising and sacking, which oftentimes delays your expansion, then assisting with it, as you'll need to take the time to rebuild and stabilize new lands. As devoted general, the highlight has got to be the high amount of upkeep reduction and charge bonus, and a nice little bump to armor, but the morale buff only affecting your general's bodyguard doesn't do much. As Sepululiluma, you start the campaign by worshipping Arena. Our final Total War Pharaoh god and S tier ranking goes to Tarhuna. Now this god is a must for those wanting to bang with the renowned Hittite chariots. I went straight for discovering and worshipping this god in my Karunta campaign and didn't look back, because of the additional debuff mechanics this faction has. The devoted general bonuses give your armies one of the highest modifiers to armor and melee defense. This is also one of the only gods that grants an attribute to its devoted general, Furious Charge. This means for your melee chariots, their damage counts as flanking even when charging from the front. Absolutely devastating. But that'll do it. Do you agree with my tier list? Which gods or combinations are your favorite? Drop them as a comment below, consider subscribing, and thanks for watching.